Welcome to episode 2 of This Unity Thing. In the previous episode, we briefly discussed the masterpiece that is the Unity editor, finishing on the inspector window with talk of game objects and components. In this episode, we're going to be talking about those building blocks and explore some of the commonly used ones that are built into Unity. Let's start with a game object. Well, wait, no, that's not quite right. This is a game object. You'll notice its distinct lack of anything. Virtually every object in your game will be backed by at least one of these, but games are filled with a distinct abundance of things, so how can these be the building blocks? Well, that's where components come in. Let's take an example of a sweet race car and a rock. Each of these elements are created from at least one game object, but they manifest themselves as very different things. The race car looks and behaves like a race car because of its components. It has a renderer that draws it, an engine that moves it, an input controller that controls it, and audio sources and physics bodies that make it sound and feel like a car. The rock, on the other hand, has fewer components, because it's a much simpler object. Probably just something that draws it and something that makes it feel like a rock. Well, that's enough talking in abstracts, and I'm done using After Effects, so let's play with a real-life example. Right-click in the hierarchy window and select Create Empty. This will create an empty one that we can play with. Select it and let's look at the inspector. At the top you can see that the object is active, its name, which you can change, its tag, and its layer. We're going to leave these as they are for now. What we're really interested in is what is right below that, a component list. You'll notice that even though we just made this object, it already has a single component, the transform. All game objects will at least have this component. It's responsible for keeping track of the position and orientation of the game object within the scene. At the very least, you can always think of a game object as a point in space. Now let's add a component that allows us to see this game object. Search for renderer. Renderers take some asset and tell the camera how to draw it. We're going to pick Sprite Renderer because I'm much better at making 2D sprites than I am at making 3D meshes. We can quickly make a circle sprite for testing by right-clicking in the project view. Though, if you'd rather, you can also import a sprite that you already made. Drag the image into the sprite slot of the component. If the image doesn't want to go, you may need to change the import settings on it. Selecting the image in the project view will allow you to see these settings. You want to make certain that the image is considered a sprite and not just a texture. If you were to play the scene now, you would notice that it doesn't really do anything. To make it more interesting than just a normal image, we need to add some physics components. First, a collider. Colliders are used to define the physical shape of the game object. Since we're working in 2D, we need to use a 2D collider. I'm going to be using a circle collider, but feel free to explore some of the other shapes. Once you have the collider added, you can see its shape in the scene view denoted by the thin green line. Adjusting the settings in the inspector will also change its size and shape out there. Next, we'll add a rigid body. A rigid body means that it will respond to physical forces so that it can move itself or be moved by colliding with something else. Again, make certain that you pick a 2D one. We can change some of the settings of the rigid body to affect its physical properties like its mass, whether it responds to gravity, or if we want to constrain how it moves. The other settings determine how the physics engine will treat it, which we're going to leave alone for now. If you just want a simple object that falls and hits things, then you're basically there. Great! You've officially dropped the ball. Now let's make some things for it to collide with. Let's use the circle sprite that we made earlier. If you drag it directly into the scene or hierarchy view, it'll make a game object with the sprite renderer already attached. Let's change the color to be something a little bit better than white. To make things easier while working on 2D games, you can activate the 2D snap in the scene view. Let's throw a collider on this object as well. We actually don't need a rigid body because this thing isn't going to be moving, just being hit. Now that we have that, let's hit play and see it in action. Brilliant. Now that we have a very simple setup of things hitting into other things, we should start to make something a little bit more complicated. The most exciting thing that I can think of is a Pachinko board. Oh, they're such fun. Grandpappy used to set up the old board and we'd watch marbles tinkle-tonkle down for hours. We can get started by duplicating our peg over and over again, but this quickly becomes a problem because what if the pegs are too big or we want to change the color? With 5 pegs, it's pretty easy to just change them one by one, but we're making Pachinko here. We're gonna have at least like 20 pegs, which isn't so easy to do by hand. Instead, we'll make something called a prefab. Prefab, of course, is short for I made this thing earlier and I would like to reuse it. To make a game object into a prefab, all you need to do is drag it down into the project view. It should change to a light blue color to indicate that it's now a prefab. Now with this as a prefab, we can drag it directly into the scene from the project view and reuse it over and over again. Duplicating is also fine. Now, if you make a change to an individual instance of the prefab, it just acts like normal. But let's say that you really like this new shade of Mikado yellow, and you like all the pegs to be that color. No worries! Simply apply that change to the Changes dropdown. Boom! Everything is updated. Now, if you make a change to a prefab and you don't want it to be overridden, that's okay. Any of your local changes won't get overridden by changes to the base prefab. So if I made one of these green and then applied changes, it would remain green. Cool, so now with our understanding of how to make game objects and components, let's go ahead and start making our boards. Here's mine, and you can see down at the bottom here, I've also added a couple of buckets, and added some walls to the side to make sure that the ball stays in the course. We'll need to position the camera so that we can see the full board in the game view. I'm using an orthographic projection so I can control the visibility with the orthographic size, and by moving its position. That looks nice. Now for the moment of truth. And there you have it. A very simple game made by just using Unity in its default state. You're now certified to use game objects and components on your own. You can print out your certificate from the link in the description, and it should be right next to the link to download this project in its current state if you want to catch up for the next tutorial. Next time, we're going to be talking about ways we can make the camera follow the ball so we can zoom in closer. In the meantime, you should explore the list of components that are available and see if there are any cool ways to mix this up to make it more fun. Though I don't know how you would, it's already close to perfect. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. I'm a person, and thanks for watching.